from the vault, high atop the pastoral center of the Diocese of Camden, you're listening to Talking Catholic.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Talking Catholic. I'm Jen Morrow, and with me today is Mike Walsh.
Hi Jen, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I am just delightful. When this recording comes out, we will have just passed, or depending on when you're listening, it could be on Palm Sunday, but we're beginning the most exciting part of the year for a communications department, the one where we don't rest. I had somebody mention to me very recently about taking time off because it was Holy Week, and I said, I don't understand any of those words. It was somebody. It's a reporter as opposed to like a Catholic journalist, as opposed to a diocesan person. And apparently,
it was a Catholic journalist.
Well, yeah, but for a national publication, and apparently national publications aren't as tied in to pulling our hair out during Holy Week. And nice. it was just very funny to sort of. I had to reschedule some meetings because of it, and it was just like, oh, look at that. It's like it didn't even occur to me that there would be people. Well, the thing is this reporter is
slacking.
No, the opposite.
Sounds like it.
Well, okay, to us maybe, but they want to participate on Holy Thursday for something, and they wanted me to change a meeting dates that was getting in the way of participating in something on Holy Thursday, and I was like, well, that's probably exactly the right thing to do because, they're focused on their spirituality and they realize that having a meeting on Holy Thursday is semi-ridiculous. At the same time, I was like, man, I'm going to be working until 9 o'clock that night. I don't know what you're talking
different.
About.
Okay, that's different. Yeah, I understand not having a meeting on Holy Thursday or the Triduum. I get that. I think one of the good things about being a Catholic journalist is we get to participate in the masses sometimes when we're working or not, but when we're working, I feel like it's even I don't want to say it's just different, but also deeper in some ways, because if you're reporting on it or taking photography, you're actually in a different mindset where you're participating in a different way. Does that make sense? Like you're participating, but you're participating in a different way. You're participating in a way that if I'm reporting on it, it's affecting me personally. So if it's affecting me personally, then I just go home and I think about it personally. If I'm reporting on it, I'm hoping that the words of the pastor or the priest are going to be spread through my writing.
See, I have a completely different perspective on it. When I am working a spiritual event, I am routinely untouched by the spiritual event, by the spirituality of the event. As a matter of fact, to the point where I don't count those. So like if I go to a Sunday Mass, I really don't count it as a Sunday Mass for me because I was working and I wasn't present spiritually. I was present physically and I was present professionally.
Right.
But oftentimes I am not present spiritually because of all the things I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Now, I consider myself a rarity in that area. John Kalitz, on the other hand, are often mentioned, never seen or heard from a colleague when we live stream events, right? I typically don't go for communion because I felt like I was not present. Yes. He, on the other hand, is completely able to live stream the event as a director and yet still remain completely present in the Mass. And once again, a reason why the Vicar General of the diocese routinely laments the fact that he never became a priest and instead, became a fine Catholic gentleman, married to a lovely woman, and has 3 excellent kids. Yes, that's right. The Vicar General of the diocese really wanted John Kalitz to be a priest.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I misunderstood that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
And lots of other people would like that too.
For John Kalitz to be a priest?
I know, it's hard to believe for any of us who actually know John Kalitz, but the reality is he may be the most spiritual human being I've ever met. Well, that's not true, but he's definitely the most spiritual communications professional I've ever met.
He is a very spiritual communications man. I am similar to you. I mean, I do feel the spirituality, but if I am working a Mass, I do not take Holy Eucharist.
Yeah.
Only because I am spiritually there, but I don't feel like I was participating to that level to receive the Eucharist.
Yeah.
So I do agree with you on that.
Yeah. I get side-eye every now and again by priests. It was unique. The only time I've ever received communion was actually during the COVID years when we were hosting virtual only masses in the cathedral, and the chancellor of the diocese, I forget if he was chancellor there, he was a bishop, priest secretary, I forget which, but at the end of Mass, he would always come up to us and offer us communion. That's actually the only time I've ever taken communion while working an event. Even so, it was afterwards. But it was very kind of him, and I appreciate that. And in that particular case, because we were seated, there was no moving, I didn't have to jump around things, I wasn't photographing it. I actually did feel present in those virtual Masses, which is ironic considering everybody else was not physically present. There I was. But
interesting.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was, and then we had breakfast afterwards at the rectory of the cathedral, and at that time was Father John Fisher, and he put on a good spread.
Oh, I bet he did.
It's weird because the 5-year anniversary of those Masses is now. Like it just showed up on my Facebook feed as a memory, and we had was it Ash Wednesday? I guess it was in Lent. It wasn't Ash Wednesday, but we had the first Lenten virtual Mass, Sunday Mass, from the chapel of the bishop's residence on the 3rd floor in this creaky, tiny little. It's an attic. It's an attic. It's a very pretty attic, but it's an attic. And then after 2 weeks of that, we went into the cathedral because there was nobody else there. So we're like, oh, let's just shoot there, and at least to have the beauty of the cathedral. And that was actually it was weird and detached and wonderful all at the same time. But I definitely prefer the now versus the then.
Oh yeah. Oddly enough, I feel like 5 years ago seems like yesterday, and also another lifetime ago at the same time.
Yeah, it does.
You know, when you look back to those times.
Yeah, especially if somebody's 4 years old. Yep.
Anyway, speaking about holy. So we're going to talk about Holy Week and Easter this podcast with a great guest. Mm-hmm. So we should, before we bring the guest on, maybe we should really quick speak about where Bishop Williams is going to be for Holy Week and Easter, because he is all over the diocese.
And this is, for many people, this is going to be the first time that you're going to get the opportunity to hang out with him during Holy Week, since he didn't come to us until May of last year. And he's visited many of the churches, but not all of them. Mm-hmm. So Holy Week obviously starts on Palm Sunday, but we're going to skip that for right now, though I'm sure it was a lovely Mass with lots of palms.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, exactly. In the Diocese of Camden, part of Holy Week is actually part one, and you'll hear about this later, part one of Holy Thursday, except we hold it on Tuesday, as many dioceses do, is the Chrism Mass. I often say it's my favorite Mass of the year. It'll be interesting. This will be the first time we've seen it under Bishop Williams, and we'll see. It's oftentimes it's really a Mass in many ways for the priests, because the institution of the priesthood was created on Holy Thursday, and he takes it as his opportunity the bishop usually takes it as his opportunity to talk to his priests directly. Even though we're live streaming it for everyone, there's lots of people present. It's interesting to see the homily be directly between the bishop and the priests. And Bishop Sullivan's had some pretty humdingers in the past, so I'm curious to see what Bishop Williams' tack will be. And then, of course, the blessing of the holy oils takes place as well.
Your favorite part?
My favorite part.
You like the pomp and circumstance?
Exactly. And the schadenfreude of the possibility of a deacon dropping an enormous vase of unblessed oil on the floor as they're walking out. So, because I think that'll win somebody an award, a photography award. But it won't be me. Somebody else will be photographing that one. So Joe Warner, if he's shooting it, right? Yeah. Okay. If he gets that, we're sending it to the CMA for an award.
Good night.
But no, so that's a great one. And then after the Mass, the bishop.
You want to say where it is? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. After the Mass.
After the Mass, Bishop also has dinner with all of his priests, which is always is also a great opportunity to spend with his brother priests. Mm-hmm. That'll be at Our Lady of Hope at 3 p.m. in Blackwood. 3:30. 3:30 p.m. in Blackwood. I should probably update something because I got to go to a Phillies game after that.
And then on Thursday, we have, of course, Mass of the Lord's Supper, Holy Thursday. So Bishop Williams will be celebrating Mass April 17th at 7 p.m. at St. Catherine Drexel Parish in Egg Harbor Township.
Yep. It's a nice church. I haven't been there in a long time. Actually, we were there. Were we there? No, it was me and Carrie were there, I think.
I haven't been there in a very long time.
Yeah. No, I recorded a podcast there in the last 2 years.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay, sorry.
We did that
I get all the
axe throwing afterward.
all you co-hosts look alike after a while.
We were, because they had the what do you call that, foam axe throwing.
Yes.
Because we were promoting a youth festival.
That's right.
Yes.
That was the last time we were there.
And then, of course, Good Friday, the Lord's Passion. Bishop Williams will be at two services. So he'll be at the Good Friday service, which will be in Spanish at St. Jude, Our Lady of Hope Parish in Blackwood, and that's at 3:00. Mm-hmm. And then later that evening, he'll be at the outdoor Stations of the Cross at Christ the Redeemer Parish in Atco at 8:00 at night. And that's pretty cool because Christ the Redeemer does a whole passion play, which is pretty much all outside. Mm-hmm. And it's like watching a play. It's pretty cool.
I can't wait to go. I've never been to it, so
yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Oh, are you going? You're definitely going?
I'm most likely going to it, and I look forward to it if I do.
Okay. Fair enough.
That's the only one I'm not positive I'm going to.
Okay.
But I'm hoping I'm going to go.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was like, news to me too. I was like, oh, cool. And then, of course, Easter Vigil, Saturday, April 19th at 7 p.m., and that will be at Camden's Cathedral.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's actually the second Vigil Mass I will attend there. The first one was actually during the COVID years as well, and we live streamed that one. I was literally in the middle of the action. That was a very unusual experience. But we'll talk about this later. But the Vigil Mass, if you have never been to one, get to one because it's an experience. Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Easter Sunday, Resurrection of the Lord, and Bishop Williams will be at the Catholic Community of the Holy Spirit in Mullica Hill. It doesn't roll off the tongue. At 10:30 a.m.
I would like to thank him for choosing a parish neighboring mine so that I can go there and photograph it easily. It's funny. Now, this may come out wrong, and some people may clutch their pearls when I say what I'm about to say.
Oh, dear.
But after Holy Week, all the pomp and circumstance of Holy Week and all the amazing things I see in it, after the Vigil Mass, it's kind of a down. It's not a downer. It's like you hit this incredible peak at the Easter Vigil Mass, and then Easter Sunday Mass is like, oh, that's nice. I mean, it's got Easter bonnets and kids looking adorable and stuff like that. Eggs colored things, stuff. I mean, it's got all the it's got all the fun stuff, and but the Easter Vigil Mass is that sort of pinnacle moment. So as I've attended all of them, I'll be honest, Easter Sunday, calling it a letdown would be the wrong terminology, but it's like, oh, okay.
I mean, it's a breather because you've also worked like 4 days in a row at that point.
Yeah,
so
but I also know I'm going to get a ton of Easter rolls like 3 hours later. I'm going to load up on the carbs and turkey and lasagna and whatever.
You Garfield?
My cousin Frank. Yeah. Yes, in many ways I am. I'm also lazy. But no, Easter dinner, lunch is one of my favorite things. Pie, brownies. Oh, God. I'm salivating. Now, on that note, I want you to know that we have a wonderful priest with us today, a columnist for the Catholic Star Herald, in an interview we recorded earlier over Zoom, and he does a great job of more thoroughly explaining everything that we just talked about, except Easter dinner. That was all me. Enjoy, everybody.
So with us today, we have one of my favorite columnists and priests in the diocese. Sorry, all of the priests, but Father Kolla is with us today, who is a longtime columnist with the Catholic Star Herald, who often writes very deep and personal and spiritual reflections. And when they show up in my email, I'm excited. It's like Christmas. So welcome, Father Kolla.
Well, thank you very much, Jen. Thank you so much.
Appreciate that. So one reason that we asked Father Kolla to be on the podcast today is you recently wrote two very good columns, one about sickness and illness, and then also about forgiveness, which are all kind of themes that show up during Lent. And as this podcast is dropping right at the beginning of Holy Week, basically, just thought it would be a really good conversation to talk about, the Lenten experience, and then, try to boost people up for Holy Week.
Sure. That's a great program, I think. Well, I began my recent column with a refrain that always sticks in my mind throughout Lent. It's so prominent from the psalm response, the Mass of Ash Wednesday. Have mercy on us, O Lord, for we have sinned. And after each portion of the psalm, that is the refrain that the people repeat: have mercy on me, O Lord, or on us, O Lord, for we have sinned. So that, of course, is a major theme of Lent, is repentance, the forgiveness of sins, to prepare ourselves for the Easter celebrations as best we possibly can, because we're a sinful people, you know? And so we always have to remind ourselves that God's mercy is much greater than our sinfulness. But, you know, I was thinking too, that the other major, and in fact was the original purpose of Lent, was the preparation of catechumens for the sacrament of baptism at the Easter Vigil, and of course confirmation and reception of the First Holy Eucharist. And in the readings, a lot of times for the daily masses during Lent, water is prominent. And recently, I said a daily mass over in Ocean City, and the first reading was from the second book of Kings. It was about the healing of Naaman the Syrian, who was a high official in the court of the king of Aram, otherwise known as Syria. And he was a leper, you see. And there was a servant girl. She was an Israelite, a slave girl, actually, of Naaman's wife. And so she told her mistress, she said, tell him to go down to Israel, where there is a prophet, Elijah, and he'll be able to help him. So it's a great story, by the way. So he goes down to the kingdom of Israel. He's got letters of introduction to the king of Israel, and the king sends him off to Elijah the prophet. And Elijah tells him, he says, well, go bathe yourself 7 times in the river Jordan. And he takes great offense at that. He says, you know, I've come all this way from Syria. We have much better waters than you've got here in Israel with this paltry little Jordan River here, you see. And how dare you send me away from the court of the king down to this crazy prophet Elijah, who's telling me to go dunk myself 7 times into the Jordan River. So he has to be convinced by his servants to do it. And he does. And of course, he comes out as white as snow. And then he realizes that there's no God but the God of the Israelites. And he takes two boatloads, I guess, of soil back to his native land, so that he can be able to worship the God of Israel in Syria. So, I mean, there's a real baptismal imagery in that, and it's quite beautiful too. I think, you know, how baptism cleanses us of all of our ills, spiritual certainly, but can also be physical too at some, you know, perhaps at some time. So you've got that reading, and then you've got the reading, not this year, but in the cycle A of the church's reading is on a Sunday during Lent, about the woman at the well, in the Samaritan woman at the well, you see, and all this water imagery. And Jesus says, I want to give you the water that lasts for life, so you won't have to be coming here and drawing out water all the time. She says, oh, sir, give me this water, give me this water. And then you've got the other gospel reading on the cycle A about the man born blind, and Jesus anoints his eyes with some kind of a salve, and he tells him to go now wash in the pool, which is seen as a baptismal cleansing. So these readings, you know, that have to deal with water, emphasize that other very important and primary, actually, purpose for the original purpose of the holy season of Lent, which is preparation for baptism. So there's that double theme that's prominent during the season, and it's quite beautiful, I think. And then of course remember that one of the major portions of the liturgy on Easter Sunday is the fact that we all renew our baptismal vows, and we are sprinkled with the water that symbolizes our baptism. So I think that's really quite rich and quite beautiful. Lent is meant to prepare us to do that as best we possibly can. Yeah.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I was thinking about this morning. The Catholic Star Herald does these series of kind of letting inviting some catechumens to share their faith story about how they got to the Catholic faith, and as as Easter Sunday comes around.
Yes.
And it kind of got me thinking a little bit also this morning about, the sponsors, right? Like, not only, where I've never been a sponsor, I've been the catechumen, an adult catechumen, which was
right.
the experience, but how interesting for the sponsor also, because really they're walking with this person, and in a way I kind of wonder if it's a renewal of baptism for them as well.
Well, it should be, a good way to do that, and of course, too, that is assuming, and we hope for the best, that they take this role seriously, and that they just don't consider it to be an honor or a formality, which unfortunately a lot of people, excuse me, take for granted, particularly when it comes to infant baptism. That and yet there is a real duty and a responsibility that a godparent should undertake, fulfilling that role. I think it is perhaps a bit stronger. That role comes to the forefront in a much more prominent way when you're dealing with adult baptisms, because these are people who have come to the faith not because of their parents, but because of some other reason. It can be because in view of marriage, that's for sure. But a lot of times too, it's people that have really spent a number of years reflecting on this and deciding to do it. So the role of a baptismal sponsor becomes much more prominent, I think, when it comes to the case of adult baptisms. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's Jen, I'm stunned to know that you have not been asked to be a sponsor yet. I'm going to start feeding people to you, because you would be an outstanding sponsor for a confirmanda.
Yeah.
Well, I have to now abridge my statement because I am a godparent.
Okay.
So that absolutely does count. You're absolutely right on that.
That's right. Yeah. And I have in my years when I was more active, in other words, when I had a parish assignment, and people would come for baptism for their babies and so forth, and a lot of times they'd have people that were really just not qualified to be sponsors. I mean, and so they don't really understand what it's all about, and a lot of them, as I say, think that it's just an honorary type of thing, and it's just a privilege that the family extends to you because they have great regard for you. I mean, I've even had people that requested for Jewish people to be sponsors of baptism. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Jewish people at all. Very fine, upright, and moral people. But it's absolutely absurd to ask for a Jew to be a sponsor for somebody for baptism when they themselves are not baptized and don't believe in it, you see. And they a lot of times they have a hard time understanding this. They really do. But, I have on occasion, when people could not really find somebody suitable, that, the church just says, well, I'm sorry, but this person really just does not qualify, that I would recommend, people in the parish who were just wonderful people and who would love to help them. And sometimes, not always, they would consent to meet with a proposed sponsor that I recommended. And some of them had a great experience with it. And they said, gee, what a wonderful person she was. That we learned so much about baptism and so much about our duties as parents and so much about the duty of the sponsor. And we're so honored that you chose this particular person to help us to get our baby baptized. So I think it's good for a priest to have these people in mind that would be willing and able and eager, very eager to step up and to fulfill that role if people could not find a suitable, sponsor, godparent on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's something I didn't consider before.
Yeah. I don't know how much.
To add clarity to that, I have only been the sponsor of one person. I've been the godfather to many goddaughters,
Sure.
but I've only been the sponsor to one person. But in both cases, they requested me because I was the only Catholic in good standing that they knew, including amongst their own family members, where they were like, I said, my second goddaughter. When the godparents when their parents came to me, I said, well, I mean, I'm not even a member of the family. And they were like, well, you are now. And I said, okay, well, there you go. And I really do. I consider her my niece. And when I'm fortunate enough to spend a lot of time with this family. And we do talk about faith and things like that. And I really do feel like I have a sense of responsibility. It's not the only thing we talk about. We talk about lots of things. Sure. But I always try to make sure that I remember my role and what I'm supposed to be here to this person, and because they specifically requested that of me, and I take a lot of heart in that. So it's I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's something I believe in.
Yeah. Well, it's a great privilege and it's a great responsibility too, and we got to focus on the responsibility part. When we're talking about sponsors and godparents, that is so important. And you have to do it in a gentle way if you're a priest, because a lot of times, the people, as I say, they just don't really understand. They don't. And they might take offense at the fact, well, I wanted this person to be a sponsor and that person, but you say they can't because of this or because of that. And so you got to be careful, in how you do this. You have to be pastoral, that's for sure, and say, well, look, we'll work with you on this, and let's, be patient. And very hard to do sometimes.
It's funny you say that, because that also happened to me. When we were coming up with the godparents for my son, someone who I'm incredibly close to and is a very spiritual person, was my recommendation to be the godfather. And I was explaining his history to our priest, and he goes, Mike, he can't be, because there was something in his, and it was of a liturgical, religious nature. He basically left the Catholic Church and become an apostate, and regardless of his spirituality, that was going to be that was a no-go. It was tough. It was something I didn't know, but I will, to credit to my priest friend, he did a great job of explaining it. And then my friend truly understood, and we moved on to another person who's been a great godfather. But you don't think about it, but there are reasons for these things to exist, and having an understanding of the faith and being a believer in the faith are going to be really important to them.
Right. I had an interesting situation where there was a baptism of an infant. And they wanted to have two godmothers. Say, well, you can have a godmother and a godfather, but and of course, and one of the godmothers was not qualified to fulfill this role. The other one was. So I said, in the best pastoral way, I said, well, look, I said, you can have them both present. That's for sure. Yeah. And we're not going to make a big deal about this. As long as you've got that one godmother that is suitable. And of course, there was a godfather involved too. And I said, you can just kind of call her an honorary godmother. And I said, but when it comes time to actually for me to record this in the baptismal register, her name will not be in there. Well, they don't know anything about that, So, I mean, everybody was happy. I mean, God love her. She was a good woman, but she just wasn't, and she didn't know. She just thought she was being like a co-godmother or something or another. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I have no complaints with that.
And,
Yeah.
and how blessed for the child. The child
Yeah,
now has tons of people who wants to love.
that's true. And another fascinating situation is this. I've done a couple of Filipino baptisms. Well, you look out in the church, I say, who are these people? Well, they're all the godparents. There are 2 rows of godparents. Say, oh yeah, it's incredible.
I love
Yeah. And I say, well, yeah, but I said, there's only one that, is recorded. Oh, yeah, but we've got to have all the, I said, well, fine, if that's your custom. And honestly, there were 2 pews. There was the parents and the actual godparents in the first row, and with a whole bunch of others in the other row behind them. And I said, these are all godparents. I said, well, maybe in your mind and in your culture, and that's great. But, when it comes time to actually do the baptism, I just want to have one real close. The others can stand around. That's fine, because they all want to come up to the font, and that's okay. They can all, I don't care. You have 25 godparents out standing around their God, but only one is really going to stand next to the mother and father and one godfather. Okay. And yeah, they understood that. They understood that. But I thought that was the most fascinating custom to have like about 10 or 12 godparents. Yeah.
that is a true community of faith right there.
There you go. That's for sure.
I like that.
Yeah. That is a true community of faith.
So talking about baptism, which will be happening toward the end of Holy Week. We are entering Holy Week, but again, by the time this drops, it will basically be Palm Sunday and the day after.
Yeah.
So, how can we prepare ourselves for Holy Week? And I was thinking today, do we really get eager for Holy Week? Is that something, on Sunday we are ushered in with the hosannas?
Yeah.
Are we with them? Are we really there?
That is a real problem. That's a real problem because, in fact, we begin Lent kind of like a ball of fire. Ash Wednesday, we're all ready. We're all gung ho. We've all got our plan, and we listen to that gospel on Ash Wednesday where Jesus tells us to pray, to fast, and to give alms. And so we've decided what we're going to do there. Well, in the next week or 10 days, it's all pretty much kind of, stored away in this compartment. This is for something. Yeah, but it's not in the forefront of our minds. And so we tend to be backsliders, that's for sure. Now, a lot of us have maybe made some kind of a resolution, particularly when it comes to fasting, about giving something up. And that's great. And many people do follow that rather faithfully. But we have to remember prayer is so important that we must take time every day, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, to just go into our room, as Jesus says, and to shut the door. And that could mean the room of our inner soul, our inner self, and there to commune with our Lord. And we need to do this, as I say, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes a day. And then we need to remember that one of the important aspects of that Lenten practice is to give alms, and that is to give some type of assistance to people who are needy. And a lot of times that takes the form of making some type of monetary donation or, to a charity. And we need to do these things, but reflectively to think, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And I am doing this to focus, or to not be so inwardly focused, so focused on myself, but to be outwardly focused on people who need my prayers and who need my assistance in some way, shape, or form. I think Holy Week is a perfect time to renew that ardor that we might have had on Ash Wednesday, and to do it from Palm Sunday all the way up to the Easter Saturday, this Easter Vigil. And I think that we should actually make a conscious decision to renew those that program that we set out for ourselves on Ash Wednesday to pray, to fast, and to give alms, and just kind of avoid all of the Easter eggs and the Easter bunnies and all of that kind of stuff that comes along with the celebration of Easter. I mean, we've got 50 days to celebrate Easter. We do. So, and that's another thing that I think gets short shrift. I mean, after the second Sunday of Easter, you're not hearing any more resurrection music. You're hearing other things. It drives me crazy. but we need to, I think, make Holy Week to give us kind of a boost. It should be a boost for us to renew our Lenten promises and to really live them out as best we possibly can during Holy Week, even if we backslided, as most of us have, during the 5 weeks preceding. Yeah.
I like that. I was talking to someone last night and I was like, is it too late? That's kind of what I was saying. I was like, is it too late to enter Holy Week if somehow you stumbled along the Lenten journey?
No. It's the perfect time to renew our Lenten practices and to really be, focused on them and to devote as much attention as we possibly can to fulfilling that program. Yeah.
And it's also, I like how you said, like, then we have Easter and then you got 50 days. It kind of reminds me of like Christmas, like in December, it's like, oh, it's the one day of December we're all looking forward to, right? And I feel like Easter can maybe sometimes fall into that as well, which is a beautiful thing about Lent. It's actually conscious reminder.
Yeah.
But then Easter, it's not just one day, because then not only is it forever, you got 50 days to remind yourself, right?
That's right. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because a number of years ago, I on Easter Monday, I went to a local restaurant to get a takeout meal, for dinner. Mm-hmm. So I said to the young lady that was there when I left, I said, "Happy Easter." She says, "Easter?" She says, "That was yesterday. It's over." I said, "Oh, okay." And that's the way people view Christmas a lot of times too.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, let's we don't have to get into this, but Advent. I mean, poor Advent really is a sad situation. That's for sure.
Poor Advent, indeed.
Oh my, yeah, that really gets bum.
And I agree with you. I always feel that Advent gets short shrift as well. We actually make a point on this podcast to really to double down on it whenever we can during the month of December.
Yeah.
But to your point about Holy Week and the benefits of it, I mean, it is so chock full of opportunities to have that same sort of fire that Ash Wednesday has. When you think about Holy Thursday has so many great elements to it that I think a lot of people out there don't really understand what a remarkable mass it is, how it starts, how it ends, and then certainly that continues on Good Friday and Holy Saturday. But Holy Thursday, I think, is one of those. If I could get Catholics to attend a mass they don't ordinarily go to, it'd be Holy Thursday Mass.
I agree with that completely. For me, it was always, I shouldn't say the greatest Mass of the year. I mean, Easter is the greatest, but I mean, for me, it was a great privilege and an honor and a joy for me to celebrate the Mass of the Lord's Supper, with the washing of the feet when I was able to do that. And actually get down on my hands and knees. And this just calls to mind. I was in my 60s, and I was early to mid 60s, and I was a pastor of a church, and we had an elderly priest like me now, who was retired from Philadelphia, and he helped out. And I remember him saying to me after the Mass of the Lord's Supper, he says, "I really admired how you got up and down doing the washing of the feet." Well, listen, now I know exactly what he meant. I got down on my hands and knees yesterday in my kitchen to try and do something. Well, getting up was, I thought, oh my Lord, I should have one of those buttons to push. but then I remembered, well, I'll roll over and I'll get on my hands and knees. I'll get into the dining room and I'll be able to brace myself on the table. So I know exactly what he meant about the washing of the feet. But, it was such a joy. It was such a joy for me to be able to do that. Yeah, it really was. Aww. And then I used to love the transfer of the Holy Eucharist to the altar of repose. I loved that. And of course, before the Second Vatican Council, which is when I was raised, really, it was really a beautiful, beautiful thing. And when the reform, they said, well, maybe we're overdoing that a bit too much, that we'll save that for Corpus Christi, because this is actually not supposed to be really a procession so much as a transfer. Well, okay. So what does that mean? Well, I was in one place one time where, I mean, it literally was a transfer, that it was bing, bang, boom, right from the altar over to the altar of repose with, I mean, one verse of, I think, the Pange Lingua, and that was it. Now, I'm sorry, that does not cut the mustard for me. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. I mean, it can be a little bit more reverent, and it can be a little bit slower. It doesn't have to be rushed, which is sometimes what that can be like. So, without having, I mean, they used to actually have, years ago when I was a kid, they would have all the little girls who had received their first Holy Communion the year before, all dressed up in their white, and they would lead the procession. They would have every altar boy that there was in the parish that could be present in the procession. It was, and they had a canopy for the priest, and it was just magnificent. But it might have been overdone. It might have been, but for me, it wasn't. It was not overdone for me. It was just right. But in any case, I think sometimes we can do a little bit better with this so-called transfer to make it a little bit more reverent and beautiful. All right. That's just my pet peeve. One of them.
That was an excellent soapbox. I support you. And the thing is, so I photographed most of the Holy Thursdays over the last 10 years.
Oh, okay.
That Bishop Sullivan has been a part of.
Oh, sure.
And I will give you, I will tell you that you would be pleased that everyone I attended was far more reverent than a simple transfer. There was a procession. Matter of fact, the last one even did have the girls who had their first Holy Communion leading the pack. So there has been a good backslide for once into reverence. Yeah, so it was really sweet. You would have appreciated them.
I'm sure I would have. Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Yes.
Yeah.
But it is an absolutely beautiful Mass, and when we consider it's the sacrament of the institution of the Holy Eucharist and the institution of the Holy Priesthood, and that aspect about the institution of the priesthood doesn't come out very clearly, I think, in our preaching, or even, well, it does come out. I read an interesting article a number of years ago in the readings for the Mass for Holy Thursday that had to deal with the institution of the priesthood. And it has to do with that gospel where Jesus takes a towel and he goes around and he washes the feet of the disciples. He comes to Peter and he says, Lord, he said, you're not going to wash my feet. You're not going to wash my feet. And Jesus says, unless I wash your feet, you will have no part with me. You will have no portion with me. This recalls to mind the institution of the ancient Israelite priesthood with Aaron and his sons. And part of it, where he's being vested and everything else, and it's being described as saying that his portion, the portion of Israel, is with God, with no one else but with God. And this ordination of Aaron was meant to show his part with God, his relationship to God in a very special way. So I think Jesus is saying, unless you let me wash your feet, you will have no portion with me, that you're not going to be a priest of mine. I don't know, but I've got to dig that article up again, because I thought it was really fascinating how the author describes that as a part of the ordination rite of the apostles, this washing of the feet, which we emphasize as being service to our brothers and sisters. And that's quite true. That's quite true. And which is a major part of what the priesthood is. I mean, we are priests for others, not for ourselves, but we are priests for other people. So that's a major element, but that needs to be emphasized, that this washing of the feet and this is a symbol of our having a portion. Our portion is not with anyone else, but with the Lord. And this rite of washing of feet is part of this ordination ceremony.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. I was just thinking that I definitely want to get to Holy Friday and Saturday, but I just have to mention really quick that that kind of does go back a couple days to Chrism Mass, because on Chrism Mass, in addition to the oils, the priests renew your vows, correct?
That's right. That is correct. Yes.
So it's kind of like you have that Chrism Mass and then kind of leading into Holy Thursday, like you're saying.
Yes. That would probably be a great a prelude to that. Yeah.
And for people who don't know what Chrism Mass is, Mike, it's like one of your favorites, right?
It is one of my favorites, and the truth of the matter is that it actually is supposed to be celebrated on Holy Thursday, but in a number of dioceses we celebrate it 2 days earlier on Tuesday because we have such a large area, and everybody, quite frankly, all the pastors have to get back to church.
It's a practical matter. That's right.
Yeah, it would be impossible to do it on Holy Thursday, so we do it 2 days earlier. But yes, it is one of my favorite masses of the year.
Yes, that's right. Yes, and it is actually meant to be celebrated on the morning of Holy Thursday. It is.
Yeah.
Father, make a note. It sounds like this is a good column for next, leading up to next year's Holy Week. Make a note, because I like it.
You mean about this ordination thing?
About the priesthood, yeah. I mean,
oh well, all right. I'll think about it. Okay, that'd be a hard thing to do. It's kind of hard to but yeah.
You have 364 days. I think
true.
You can do it.
All right. That'll probably at least help for a while to stop the dementia from setting in. If I think about this. Yes. All right.
So moving on to Good Friday. Then we have Good Friday.
I hate the wheels turning.
One thing I love in the Diocese of Camden is there are quite a few live stations of the cross in our diocese. And at least in 3 counties out of 6. So I'm sure there's even more that I'm not aware of. But how Good Friday, and talk about Good Friday, Father. I don't even have a question. Just that's right, Mike. He's Mike and shaking his head.
Always professional, Jen.
Good Friday, huh? Yeah. Stations of the Cross. That is a very common outdoor Stations of the Cross, are very important for the Latino community, and I can remember, my goodness, many years ago, before I was ordained, I was a really late vocation, so late that I almost didn't make it, and I was in Santo Domingo for Holy Week. And I never in my life saw anything like the outdoor Stations of the Cross on Good Friday in the capital of Santo Domingo. It was incredible, and it was not only a religious celebration; it was also a kind of a civic celebration. Mm-hmm. I mean, you had the army generals and everything else. They were marching in this parade, and I think the president of the country was there, and with his sash on. And then, of course, they had all of the people in elaborate costumes, and there were people actually standing along the side in tears. They're weeping, as Jesus goes by carrying the cross. It really an emotional celebration.
Yeah.
Well, they really make liturgy a full body experience, that's for sure. Yeah, to say the least.
When you're in the pews and if it's not a Good Friday procession,
Yeah,
I know some people who are like, yeah, I just skip Good Friday. It's too depressing and it's too long and like that.
beautiful, beautiful. It's all so beautiful. It really is.
It is. Yeah,
oh,
you're absolutely right. It is. While certainly it can. Good Friday the service can be, because as we well know, there's no mass on Good Friday. The service maybe a few minutes longer, but the beauty of it for me, the starkness of it, the
really?
quiet of it,
Yes,
it's beautiful. You know,
it is. The simplicity, and as you say, the starkness of it. I love it. When the priests come out in silence, in complete silence, and just prostrate themselves for a moment, and then you're supposed to leave. And this is very important. And thank goodness the last time I was at a Good Friday service, that they did say, please leave the church in absolute silence, please. Because usually after the liturgies, that becomes quite chatty, and almost, yeah. And of course, it is beauty. It is a beautiful ceremony. It really is. And of course, we all know that when you say, Jen, that it's too depressing and it's sorrowful, well, this is a stepping stone to Easter Sunday. I mean, there's Easter Sunday. Of course it is. If there's no Easter Sunday, Good Friday is horrible. I mean, it's awful. My God, who would want to celebrate it? But in the back of our mind, it's that, this is just a stepping stone to Easter Sunday,
Yeah. And then, Holy Saturday, is another, most of that day is quiet. There's no morning masses or anything.
Nothing.
Until the granddaddy of all the masses, that Easter Vigil. You want to talk about a long mass? That's a long mass, but it's worth going to, because that one, you get the explosion of light in the middle of it. It's such a great mass.
Yeah, it is a great mass. Yes, probably the most symbolic and most beautiful mass of the year, and it's very impressive. And I used to love when I, was had an assignment, because I always sung the Exultet. I loved doing that, and I could do it without having people screech. And figure it was like fingers running, like fingernails running across an old blackboard. I mean, I was able to do it, and I loved doing it. And it is a beautiful thing, that prayer. Yeah.
And it kind of gets back to, most of the time, if hopefully a parish is fortunate enough to have catechumens, that's where we'll see a litany of baptisms and confirmations come forward, occasionally a first communion. It's really it's a beautiful highlight of a parish.
It is,
particularly when it's got a successful catechist program. And it's great. Yes, there could be 7 readings, so you might be listening a little longer, and you're going to be in the dark for a solid 20-30 minutes. And but it starts with literally a ball of fire outside.
It really does. It does.
It's an exciting one. It's as Jen knows, I hoard photo assignments during Holy Week, because I won't give them out to any of our freelancers, because I want to go to every single one of them, because I love them. So
oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, it's a wonderful experience. The Easter Vigil, and a lot of people who have not attended one are really missing out. And I know from my own experience a number of years ago, my sister and her husband attended an Easter Vigil ceremony when they were away, and they had to go because on Easter Sunday they would be traveling, and they thought it was one of the most beautiful experiences that they had ever had. And I have a special fondness in my heart for that ceremony, because it was the last mass my mother attended before she passed away rather suddenly. And I thought,
Yeah.
isn't that something, you know? Wow. And I
Wow.
thought, what a wonderful thing that, you know, and she attended it because she had to, because she was traveling at the time. And and she would be traveling on Easter Sunday. And that was, yeah, by the grace of God. I thought, wow,
Oh,
you know, yeah, looking back
that's
on it, it's a beautiful
a
thing.
good one to go out on. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, it sure
That's
is. It
beautiful.
sure is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I tell you, Father Kolla, thank you very much. We actually snuck an extra 12 minutes out of you. So thank you
Really?
for giving us a little extra time.
I
We
can't
promised you
believe it.
30 minutes and you gave us 42. So
Time has just flown by. Well, I
it
can't
is.
thank you enough for asking me to do this. So God bless you and everyone, and I hope everyone has a very productive Holy Week and a very happy and a blessed Easter.
We couldn't say it any better ourselves, Father. Thank you very
Okay.
much. And
Thank
to
you.
all our listeners, we'll see you again next week. See you,
Okay.
everybody.